Well, we hope you've been enjoying our 2022 online summer seminar. This session right here is actually live. So we're live here from Pensacola, Florida. If you're anything like me, as you've been going through the sessions this week, a lot of thoughts pop into your head. And those thoughts tend to turn into questions. And so we thought we'd be a help to you today by providing a panel of some of our experts who could perhaps help collaborate and answer some of the questions that you may have. So undoubtedly, if you're viewing this session, you've already logged in and you're in the app, you may be wondering, how do I ask a question? Well, you can do this. If you go to the Q&A section while you're in this session, and at the very bottom of that screen, you can enter a question. And if you see a question that's similar to the question you already have, you can simply upvote that question and it'll bump it up and you can see those. So we're looking at these screens today as you type in questions. We'd like to answer some of these for you. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce who we have here at the table. To my left is Mrs. Amy Yohe. She is the managing editor at Abeka. She's been a very highly successful classroom teacher. She spent several years as elementary principal and then high school principal at Pensacola Christian Academy. And next to her is Jimena Brainerd. She's the elementary product manager for Abeka Publishing. She was born and raised in Guatemala. She homeschooled through Abeka through grades 8 through 12 before receiving her bachelor's and graduate degrees in education. And Jimena is well suited to oversee her team of master teachers in developing the Abeka products that many of you are using. We definitely value her experience and her knowledge of both Guatemala on the international scene as well as here in the United States. Carmen Baker is the high school product manager for history, English, and electives. She's been teaching for nearly 20 years, and we love her love for English particularly. So she oversees history, English, and other electives. She effectively leads her team of skilled writers and editors in creating Abeka amazing products. And her skill in education is superseded only by her love for Christian education. And then finally, we have Monica Percival. Monica taught in the classroom for about 17 years. She's been working for Abeka on the publishing team for about the last 7 years. And she masterfully coordinates the STEM subjects, so particularly math and science on the secondary level, in developing those products. Monica's ability to think of the needs of teachers and of students and parents gives her products a special touch. I'm Josh Burks. I serve as the administrator of Pensacola Christian Academy, the school that Abeka really grew in. So it was the beginning of the Abeka products. I know a lot of teachers are thinking, what's new this year? So we're going to take some time over these next several minutes to ask these ladies, what is new in their area? So, Amy, why don't you get us started?
Sure, absolutely. I saw the question pop right in. Can you outline what subjects and elementary grades are being updated for this school year, please? So, Jimena, that sounds like your cue. Let's jump right in and talk about the products that are rounding out the completion of our 4th grade revision. And I know you've got a couple of product lines for 6th grade as well. So let's start with Arithmetic 4. We are going to quickly hit the highlights so that we can move on to other questions. But we sure are excited about these new products being in your classroom, and we'd love to tell you a little bit about them.
Well, like you said, we're going to start with Arithmetic 4, and I'm super excited to get this to you. One of my favorite things about Arithmetic 4 is if you look at curriculum, you will find a very strong spiral review. And if arithmetic is not your strongest subject to teach, you will find helpful hints and a very detailed way to teach concepts while still giving the teacher flexibility to do what she needs to with the content that is in here. There's also a very engaging part of the book that I think the children and the students will enjoy the most, and it's called Clever Cranium. And that is for critical thinking and other concepts, and this will just level up what they have learned. And I think they're gonna absolutely love this new take on Arithmetic 4.
That's excellent. One of the things that you have touched on that is so key to Abeka's product development is how we want to meet teachers of all ability levels and all interest levels. And so whether you're strong in the subject of teaching arithmetic or whether it's brand new to you maybe this year, there are so many teacher helps built into the curriculum daily lesson plans, into the teacher's edition to help you and your students be successful successful, and certainly spiral review is key for Abeka, and so that is very, very strong in this new Arithmetic 4 book. Teachers are going to love it. Let's talk a little bit about the science textbooks. Now, this one is interesting because we had the opportunity over the past year, not only at Pensacola Christian Academy, but also at a few other schools to partner with our early release program. And so these textbooks were used prior to their final publication in several classrooms to get teacher and student feedback on these new products. What are you most excited about for Science 4, Jimena?
Well, I think it's probably this book, the STEM activity book. This is something that is brand new, and it'll give a hands-on application to the concepts that are already taught in the book. They get to apply the scientific method into several of the labs that are in here, and just what is in here will definitely make it come alive. It's
the students
wonderful.
are going to enjoy getting their hands on in this science course with the scientific method and with all the experiments and demonstrations that are included. Another key element of Abeka product development is what we call in the office flexible pacing options. In this particular product, what I see are worksheets, activities, experiments that are called for in the curriculum lesson plans as part of just the mainstream scope and sequence of the program. But then there's a lot of optional activities and worksheets and experiments and demonstrations as well, which really allow you to pick and choose according to the interests and the needs of your students and the availability of your time, bonus things that you can do in the classroom or encourage students to do on their own. So a lot of flexibility with the new Science 4. And I think we're all excited about the new History 4, Jimena. We know that's coming out next month. So for schools that haven't started yet, they're maybe looking forward to receiving those new History 4 products. Can you give us just a little hint at what you're excited about in those?
Absolutely. There has been so much content added to it because our last chapter goes through Biden's first year as president. So you will find timely applications to what we're going through in our history today, but you'll also find that it is age appropriate, so we will meet students where they are. I also am very excited for them to look at some of the things that have been added in the teacher's edition. My personal favorite is the fascinating facts, just things that you wouldn't normally know, but that just have been added for the students' enjoyment. I also really like the highlights that we give of different people in different times that have collaborated or done something spectacular for history.
I agree. There's so much extra information. I have a fourth grader, a rising fourth grader, that'll be using these products this year. And I'm excited for the variety of things that will engage him in the new History 4. I'm thinking about the extra bonus feature boxes that are throughout the student text. Well, they'll learn about the different homes of various presidents. They'll learn about age-appropriate economics, which is so timely for what's going on in our country right now. So he's going to be introduced to terms that he wouldn't have been in the past, but are really going to be timely and helping him develop his knowledge of history. So as a parent, I'm excited for these brand new products to be in my home with my fourth grader this year. That's great, Jimena. And I know it goes beyond fourth grade, even to some revisions that have happened with sixth grade. We did the Reading 5 revision. We called it a refresh last year, and that has continued into sixth grade. So tell us a little bit about what we can expect with the new sixth grade reading products.
So before we used to have a different book for
the book report?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So we are changing that out and we are doing Trapped in a Hot Air Balloon. And I think that this book will be an exciting adventure for the students to go on. It handles issues that that you may be going through with your own students, but it's done in an age-appropriate way along with the curriculum. It is just, it is a timely book.
It is a timely, modern, realistic fiction book.
I like the title of it.
Trapped.
Just the title of it.
Engages
into that age group very well.
It does. They're going to enjoy it. It's a brother and sister that are on quite the adventure, both physically but also emotionally.
Yes.
And so it'll bring a lot of things. And you've got a robust curriculum to go along with that to help the teacher walk the students through analyzing the emotions, the experiences that they're dealing with, and really helping students to see the biblical principles behind how we deal with the unexpected things that happen in life. So Message of the Mountain had been in 5th grade,
Yes.
or 6th grade, excuse me. It was pulled down to 5th grade with the revision last year.
And
This is coming in as the replacement novel, and you'll read it as a class, discuss it as a class, and then the students will be be able to write that book report.
Can I interject a quick comment here?
Absolutely.
Related to what I see our audience is asking? I see many of you have asked, how long does it take to get our professional growth hours? That's actually answered in the FAQs. If you go to the FAQs there in your app, the direct answer is September 30th. And the reason for that is we're planning to leave this open for those of you who want to rewatch something, or if you have some friends or some colleagues in your school there that you'd like to refer them to. So we'd love for them to also participate in the online summer seminar. So we're going to leave this open for a while, and then at the end of that time period, by September 30th, we'll go through and we'll send out the CU certificates for the contact hours that you have. But if you've got questions before then, or if you need faster response time, feel free to send us an email. Again, the email's in your FAQs, but it's summerseminar@pcci.edu. That's summerseminar@pcci.edu. So I just want to put that plug in there so that you knew that we see your questions coming and want to address that. But let's go back. I've seen several people have submitted questions about an outline of what are the new products rolling out, if you can kind of continue
Sure.
that train of thought that you had there.
And I think we can wrap up the third grade because I
Sure.
do know we want to get to everybody's questions. I said third grade. We're talking about sixth grade right now. Let's talk about sixth grade reading. Give us just a hint of what that first compilation reader looks like.
Absolutely. This is probably my favorite book, and in it you will find something that we hadn't had necessarily before, and it is the time periods, the literary time periods. They are just a mention in the back of the book, but it is so that the students can be acquainted with that material, and it'll serve as a springboard into junior high and high school. So when they are presented with the material, it's something that they are already familiar with in the past. In addition to that, I was talking to you about this before. We have illustration highlights or artist highlights. So in it, you will find the stories illustrated by the person that we are, or not the person that we're illustrating, but the style that we are highlighting will be in the stories, and they are beautiful illustrations. So I'm looking
Classic
forward
illustrators
to
of the past,
Yes.
modern illustrators of today.
Yes.
Sometimes you hear STEM referred to as STEAM with that art component added. So we've been able to incorporate that into that textbook. So broad. And I love your mention of how you've intentionally built into sixth grade what's going to prepare them for seventh grade and beyond. That's such an important part of the curriculum mapping step that we do. And I know that excites Carmen with her English love to hear that you're exposing them to things in sixth grade that they'll need to further know, understand, develop, and even be assessed on as they get into high school English courses. To round out those new products for sixth grade, we will have the sixth grade Bible journal for this year. We did the Bible 4 journal, the Bible 5 journal, and now the Bible 6 journal. We'll round that out, giving students an opportunity correlated with their Abeka flashcard Bible lessons to articulate what they are learning and how they can practically apply that to daily living. So sixth grade teachers, my heart is in the sixth grade classroom. I spent many years in a sixth grade classroom. Would have loved to have had a product like that to use with my students. So I hope that you'll enjoy incorporating that into your review days, maybe into a break that you have shortly after lunch before you start your next transition. Wherever you choose to incorporate that Bible journal in, it is really going to help students internalize those truths and develop their own biblical worldview. So, Mr. Brooks, that kind of rounds out, and I know it was quick,
Sure.
but that's what can be expected with our brand new products for fourth grade and for sixth grade this year. Hopefully, we've answered some of the questions that those watching
that was
had.
great. We'll come back to, I know we've got some new products coming out that have just come out in secondary as well. We'll come back to those. I'd like to come back to some of these questions that we've been receiving. This one I see is quite a few people are asking, and that is the transition from one type of school setting to another. Coming into the Abeka curriculum. It's our first year, only have a handful of students. Would it be beneficial to have combined classes, or is that too small? What about separating the younger students from the older students? I realize that we're talking about the content here in academic questions, but the application of that in a school setting is really important. Amy, what do you think about the concept of combined classes?
I really appreciate the question, and I think the biggest thing to understand and the answer is that it's not one size fits all. Every school is going to handle that scenario a little bit differently. Some schools are able to get all of the teaching support that they need to handle all of that instruction live. Others will use Abeka video resources to perhaps teach a subject to one group of students while the teacher can teach another group of students live. There's so many different scenarios that you can do. There are key aspects to consider when you're thinking about combining certain grade levels together, and we have educational consultants here on our staff at Abeka. They're very experienced in the combined classroom area and can help you with that. So we'll give you this email address a couple of times throughout this Q&A, but schools@abeka.com would be a great resource for anything that somebody outside of our panel here has key expertise in. But I do think there's a variety of ways that you can successfully have almost that one-room schoolhouse feel of having students from multiple grades together in one or two rooms, and whether it's a combination of live and video instruction or one or the other, you can certainly be successful, and Abeka has resources to help grow that small starting school into a solid school that can continue for many, many years.
Good.
Such a great question.
Yes, good. Another level of transition is coming from what we're referring to here as a government school, a state school, to a different type of education, a private education, Christian education. And I know, Jimena, you've even experienced that in your education through Guatemala and coming into Christian education. But what are top 3 tips that you have for us in this transition? And I think I'm just going to kind of open this up. Maybe if each of you could contribute one thought of what would be a valuable thing to consider in that transition into a Bible-based Christian worldview setting, coming from one that didn't have that into a setting with intensive phonics, the one that didn't have that, one into a spiral method of teaching and review that didn't have that. So we're kind of starting from a basis there that's different. So I'll open it up here to
We're all going to compete.
It's probably one of those things where the thoughts are coming like out of a fire hydrant. Which droplet do I want to grab to share?
You've already mentioned spiral learning. And I don't think that one is going to be so much an adjustment for the students as it's going to be a benefit for the students, because coming from perhaps a mastery learning approach where a concept was covered and then finished and set aside, and a new unit was started with new concepts and that was covered and set aside, that spiral learning approach of constantly wrapping back around and being able to build on that learning. I like to think of it as a spiral staircase, and you continue on up. We find that to be a huge asset. I'm thinking back to our own time in the classroom of students coming in, and it does take time. You can't expect even a student who was high performing using a different curriculum or in a different setting, there's always going to be a gap that has to be closed when you're changing schools or changing curriculums. So give them some time, give them some adjustment, but that spiral learning approach is actually going to be key for them. So pay attention to, we always say teach to the average in your classroom. Teach to the average, but know that if you've got a brand new student coming in, they're going to possibly be lower than average to start out with, and don't skip the review opportunities that are built into the curriculum. Make sure that their homework is being completed appropriately so that they get that full spiral review experience. And you'll find that will in time really be an asset to them catching up.
Yeah.
Ladies, what else did you think of, Jimena?
I would also say, I think one of the things that was most encouraging to me when I did the transition was the amount of patience that, well, it was my mother, but, that my teacher had toward me, because you're right, there is an academic gap. And it was so important to us to understand, the why we were there, like why we had made the decision to change, because we were looking for a Christian curriculum, something that was not what the world had. We wanted something that was better. So we struggled at the beginning, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, because by the end of the year we were excelling, but it just took time and it took patience. Those are the two things that I think are key when it comes to transitioning.
Pretty sure that word patience is on every teacher's job description, so there will be an important use case for it. Ladies, did you think of anything else? Carmen, I'm thinking about your help classes.
Yes, I was going to bring up the fact that there are there are instances where you have a student that's coming in from another school, and I'm thinking specifically of English, where maybe grammar wasn't something that was emphasized. So they come in, and the way the grammar curriculum is built, the way English is built on the 7th through 12th grade, there are an abundance of exercises that can be done for extra practice. There are supplemental exercises that can be used. And then there's the opportunity to have a help class. For years, depending on what grade level I was teaching, I would have a help class on a Tuesday or a Thursday for 30, 40 minutes after school, and that's some one-on-one time that you can spend with that student. I will say, because of all of the exercises that we have, that they catch on. Patience is key. Sometimes it takes just a little bit of time, but they catch on and they excel quickly. And I mean, I've seen students that have come in with no knowledge of grammar, and by the end of quarter one, they're right there with the rest of the class.
You're talking about help classes, and I'm also thinking about some resources we have to help with that. The grammar, the junior high mathematics, we have the supplemental exercises, which is not called for in the main curriculum. It's meant to be a help class tool, a remediation tool, a one-on-one tutoring tool. So if you're interested in a resource like that, supplementary exercises is what that product is called in both junior high and math and English, to be a help to students. Monica, think spiritually about that transition and how we don't want to make assumptions on our students' spiritual condition.
Right. So as everyone was talking, the one thing that I thought about is that I grew up in the public school system. So I was kindergarten through 12th grade, and then coming to college and then having the opportunity to teach in a Christian school. The one word that came to mind was freedom, to be able to share a biblical worldview and biblical standards and principles that even for me as a student in a public school, I didn't hear that. And so that's a great opportunity and something different that we can consider for our students that are coming in, that they haven't had that discipleship, biblical worldview training from a public school to a Christian school.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that that doesn't just happen in Bible class, and that we've intentionally built prompts into our subjects, all subject areas, to develop biblical worldview. But it may be the history teacher that ends up having that conversation with a student about their salvation.
Yeah. I would also say, if I could add to this, and Monica, kind of building off of what you said, in that truth is truth no matter who says it. And even in a state-sponsored school, there's going to be truth delivered.
Yes.
And it's important that we recognize and not create a wedge in that student's heart, because that student may have loyalties, because there are very good teachers and Christian teachers who teach in a state-sponsored school, and they have been planting those seeds that may not have been able to flourish as freely, but they've still been planted. So it's important that we not draw a wedge in their lives where they feel like we're expecting a sense of loyalty, either them or us. It should never be that way, but rather we're going to take that truth that you've already received and allow that to flourish and to grow freely, like you said. I think that's a great perspective on that. Good. Great question. I know you got more than 3 responses or 3 tips there, but we're about the value here. So you asked and we delivered. So we're going to just jump into this next question. It's the highest on the vote list. Is there a schedule for a single teacher teaching 9th through 12th grade? And Amy, going to lean on you a little bit for this, but I'll get it started by saying that every school is going to be very different in how that is done. So how the school day is structured is going to vary, and the curriculum is built to be used by a multitude of different types of school. So that's probably a more school-specific question.
Yes.
But maybe you can chime in on that.
A couple things that could help you to know, though, is that every course that Abeka offers in high school is based on a 50-minute class period. So as far as setting up a schedule, you don't have to have varying minutes in your different classes. History should be a 50-minute class. Math should be a 50-minute class. English should be a 50-minute class. And if you are using video resources to help supplement in that scenario, it's good for you to know, too, that those Abeka Pro Teach video lessons are all based off of a 45-minute schedule, allowing a 5-minute buffer for teachers to check attendance and check homework. And obviously some days the video is shorter because of a quiz that you'll administer or some other activity. But just know that every course is built to take 50 minutes so that you can have a consistent schedule throughout the day, and every video course is based on 45 minutes of video instruction. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I want to jump off that. In fact, one of our questions is, what would you consider the best advice for a new teacher using the Abeka video program? So if they're utilizing the
Yes.
ProTeach to some capacity,
There's no doubt in my
Yes.
mind what number one
Yeah.
is, and I wish I had a copy of it to hold up, but it is to use the video manual.
Yeah.
So the video manual has been developed based off of the curriculum that the teacher used to teach the video class, and then is also taking into consideration exactly what the teacher in the video class did. And the key to your sanity and your success in moderating, especially multiple grades of video, would be to keep those video manuals handy and put a tab at the top of the page that you're on so you can flip to it easily, and it clearly defines for you what your preparation is and then what the procedure is that the student should do. So it's not going to talk to you as if you're teaching the information. It's going to talk to you as if you're proctoring the video class and give you just the bare bones of what you need to do to help your students be successful.
Good.
So every once in a while we'll come across somebody who's using the video program and the video manual is still in the box. I'm like, no, that's your security blanket. That's your key to success. Pull it out and let that be your guide every day.
Good. And by the way, if you ask a question and we're not answering it completely, feel free to push another question through there, upload it, send it to the top of the list, and we'd be glad to tackle it. So I'm going to keep that train of thought going about new teachers using the video program and to kind of reverse it. What about new products that we have in secondary, in high schools? Monica, you want to jump in and share some of yours with us?
For the high school science, we have a revised, updated biology textbook. It's been updated facts, statistics, content, all based on our research and development process and what that revealed that we needed to update. So the student book's been updated. We've also made some changes to our lab manual. We have added 10 additional labs, and that's something that we saw in research that we needed some more opportunities for lab hours for schools. Also, we've heard from customers they would like some more options for labs. So we added 10 additional labs that also includes some engineering design labs. So there's some new labs there. The teacher edition for the lab manual is new this year. We added a spiral bound for just ease of flipping through pages, being able to fold them back, and then it's hardback as well. So more durable over more years. One of the other changes that we made in the biology curriculum is that we have added the STEM project guide in place of science and action. This product was first introduced and integrated into the science, matter, and energy. And so we've been continuing with that process and added it into the curriculum for biology. A great product for helping students plan and follow through with a science project. The teacher edition is updated as well. We have it in 2 volumes. This is volume 1. The volumes, the teacher edition that was normally in the back of the material, all of that information has been moved into where the student pages are, so you can open it up, and instead of having sticky notes all over your pages as you're teaching, you've got all of your material on the side margins. You have the section review answers on the pages with the reviews. So it's very user-friendly. We have updated and added extra content in the way of biblical worldview. We have added in the student edition, and I didn't mention this for the lab manual, but we added additional critical thinking questions throughout so that you can help your students with that, as well as with biblical worldview questions that's been added and updated. So there's a lot of resources, new resources in this product for teachers who are familiar with the old,
Yes.
a lot of the old product, a lot of new information for the teachers.
Great. Carmen, tell us a little bit about the Spanish.
I am really excited. I know it's been alluded that I love English, and it's kind of like when you have another child, you love them both equally. Well, I'm feeling that way about all the subjects now. As we have worked on Spanish, Spanish 2 is just a continuation of Spanish 1, helping them grow in their language acquisition. As we've looked at the new student book, you will notice some of the same great features that you noticed in Spanish 1 in Spanish 2. There are abundance of practice exercises for you to use as your class needs. There's also a spiral review added in, not just at the end of units, but also in the middle of the unit, so that we're able to ensure that the student has grasped the content that we're teaching right now in unit 1, 2, 3, whatever, and then in the previous units as well. It starts out with a great review of Spanish 1 in Units 1 and 2, and then again grows their language acquisition. Some of the exciting things that we have in here are dialogues and conversations, and then some of the elements that the students love are the presentations that we've added in. They have a play presentation. It is so much fun. The kids absolutely loved it. So there's a play presentation, there's a gospel presentation, a Bible story presentation, because ultimately we want our students to learn the Spanish language so that they're able to tell others about the Lord. Vocabulary is still a part of each unit. At the beginning of each unit, there's an A and a B list for vocabulary words, just to expand the knowledge that they have. They've got to have those tools to be able to talk to one another. We have verses that they'll be memorizing. It really is a great tool. Just like in Spanish 1, we had oral fluency exercises. Here we have literacy comprehension exercises. So they're able to build and ensure that they're reading well, comprehending what they're reading. And there's some digital tools that go right alongside it. We have digital teaching slides that will help you in the classroom to be able to make that lesson come alive with animations, and we have native Spanish speakers speaking in some of these, so they're able to hear great inflection as they go through. I could go on and on. The TE has exciting elements in it too. There's just so much.
Do you want to tell us about history while you're at it?
I can. It was really funny. My daughter has just finished up 8th grade, and so she was able to be part of like an early release program for this, so it's able to be delivered all at one time to both markets. And she saw this book in the back of the car. She's like, "Mom, it's so pretty. I love it." History 8, it goes up through January of 2022, so it is incredibly current, and I love that. These students are getting the most up-to-date knowledge in this book. We've taken it from a Christian perspective. We want them to know the facts, but we want them to know the facts based on God's Word. So this book has critical thinking throughout the chapter, so the students aren't just memorizing terms and definitions, although those are very important. You need those, but we're also asking them to think about how does that apply to them in their life. To go along with the student book, we have the teacher edition, and it has some tremendous things, fascinating facts. I know Jimena had mentioned that, just so you can add extra interest to your lesson. We have discussion questions that you can ask that aren't in the student book, but you can supplement in your lesson, and prompts to help your students be able to think critically. To go along with it, we have a civics activity book, so they're able to learn more about their state, their local government. And we also have a map project book that they'll be working on as well. Because in history, I mean, it is important that they know, where were these people when they started? Where are we? How does this correlate to where we live? So it's just, it's beautiful. It works so well together. I'm excited for you to get to use it in your classroom.
One of our key course objectives for all of our history courses is to develop good citizens. And I think that History 8 book is going to go a long way to helping students not only know the facts of history, but be able to apply them to what's going on in our country and our world today, and be prepared to be future leaders. There's so many different things that you all mentioned that I wish we could take time to build on. We could spend hours talking about new product, and I know that's not the only intent of this session. Let me touch on just a couple of things, and I'm going to show you one more last new product for this year, and that is that, Mr. Burks, as you kind of jumped from video to new product, I think it's important for those in our Christian schools to know that each one of these courses in the high school that we're talking about has video support for it this year too. So you allowed us to step into your Pensacola Christian Academy classrooms this past year and use these new products with your students, and so there are Pro Teach videos available for every one of those high school courses in case it's needed for the different uses that schools have for video for this year. Monica, as you're talking about biology, names and faces were popping into my head of those who've contributed to product development. And I'm not just talking about our team here in Abeka. I'm also thinking about teachers and subject matter experts that we have partnered with all over the country that have contributed to product development in the last year. So that's been exciting to kind of expand our team outside the walls of the physical Abeka building and utilize expertise from other areas. You gave us a peek at how the teachers editions look. book, and it's true for elementary and high school, that they all have that inset student page, and then they're filled with lesson plan content or bonus feature content. You'll never use all of it in a single year, but there's plenty there for you to pick and choose. And sometimes that helps us as teachers not feel like we're in a rut and we're teaching that same lesson the same way every year. So lots of good bonus content. Carmen mentioned our digital teaching slides. That's our new product line of PowerPoint presentations that are designed to match the exact lesson plans that we provide, but we strongly believe teachers ought to use lesson plans flexibly to meet their needs and their students' needs. And so those PowerPoints, even though they're designed to match the curriculum, are 100% editable. So teachers can make those their own, and they can change things up, they can add information, they can subtract information, they can rearrange slides, they can add slides. There's video animations and images and interactives, all kinds of fun things included. The very last new product line that we're excited about for this year is an update to our Genesis course in the high school. This is a 1-semester course, and it is a brand new product. It's not a revision, it's not a new edition of the previous book. It is a brand new book because we wanted to focus specifically on Genesis 1 through 11. So this book has a strong emphasis on origins and then on worldview development and also apologetics, not only knowing what you believe, but being able to defend why you believe it and then how you can live it out.
Yeah, and that is so important today. If you go back 50 years, 100 years in our country, when generally there was a strong cultural Christianity, people weren't generally questioned or pinned down on, can you prove it? How do you know?
Yes.
And so the apologetics today is so important for that.
I think it's great. There's live it out sections at the end of the chapters that really help them articulate, what does the Bible say? Sometimes it will say, what does somebody else believe about that? Sometimes it's good for us to understand what other people believe, because then we can approach them more effectively with truth. Then scenarios about how do you share what you've learned with somebody else who doesn't share your beliefs? And then to go back to talking about flexible pacing options, this is designed for a single semester of 85 lessons. We usually leave 1 out of every 5 lessons for a chapel day for our Christian schools, but there is a dig deeper section in the back. And so for those that don't have that chapel day maybe every single week, there's bonus content in the back that just builds off of different concepts as we walk through the narrative of Genesis 1 through 11. And so it's been a really exciting book to watch develop, and then also to see it used in the classroom. My son, who graduated from PCA last year, used this book in his senior level Bible class.
And my son will get it this year.
And your son will get it this year. So we're right there with you. Our children in the classrooms using these products, and that's what excites us, is to see them effectively used in the lives of students. That's our mission.
Wow. So this next question I see actually ties in quite extensively with some of the things that we've been talking about, but really an age-old life question is, I don't have enough time to do everything I think I should do. And so whoever originated this question, I should say questions, it's like a whole package in this one. That's pretty smart of you. Do you recommend starting day 1 lessons on the first day of school, or should we get to know your activities and teaching procedures? Before we get to break down the rest of this question, let me just answer that one. That's kind of an administrative question, but I would encourage you, if your school is not currently prepared to start teaching on day 1 of school, you may want to consider taking some steps to do so. We're branching a little bit off of our course a little bit, but I feel it's important to lay the foundation to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So I would encourage you to have some sort of orientation day, some sort of day where the get to know you period, the commonly asked questions, those are all addressed in advance. And so that when you start school on the first day, whether that's a Monday or a different day, that your teachers are prepared and that your students are prepared to begin the learning process for that year. So if that means an hour some other day, or 2 hours or 3 hours to get through some of those just busy type of details, then I would encourage you to do that and make a fun day of it. If you have a small school, perhaps you can even have some refreshments and so forth to get those things out of the way so that you can have day 1 and begin teaching on day 1, because that's important to accomplish what's in front of us. And that leads us to the next question. We never seem to finish the curriculum before the school year is over. How can you realistically finish when a lot of the holidays now leave you 3 or 4 day weeks? I feel like I have to skip spelling if we don't have a full week. Now, I don't know why you chose spelling as a subject to skip. That sounds kind of personal. But, It's such a great and important question. And I want to preface it by saying, when we don't get through a curriculum, we're really robbing our students of their education, and in a spiral setting that's so important, or else we're skipping things. I think from a history standpoint, when I was a young person, it was almost a joke that students never learned anything past World War II because the history teacher loved the subject so much they just got stuck and they never got into modern history. And that's unfortunate for the students. And so we don't want to do that. We don't want to rob them. So how can we do this successfully? Now, Carmen, because they singled out spelling as the victim to this calendar, I want to start with you. You're an English teacher.
Yes, sir.
And English is one of those classes where there's a lot of parts between the vocabulary and the grammar and the literature and the composition and the spelling. Whoever wrote this, they want to drop spelling. How can we keep spelling in the picture and finish
How
everything?
can we save spelling? I will tell you really that the biggest thing is going into each day, each lesson with a plan of how can I fit this in. We've alluded to this, right, and I mentioned it in Spanish. You know, when you teach, let's say we're teaching apostrophes in grammar, there may be 6 exercises of practice for apostrophes. So maybe you find that your students are excelling and you don't have to do every one of every exercise. Do each exercise, at least 1 or 2, but maybe you don't have to do the entire thing. So you can pick and choose which pieces of the exercise you want to do. Really and truly having the plan of, I have 50 minutes, so I know I'm going to spend 5 minutes doing this and then 10 minutes doing this. For when I do literature, some things that help save time is I think of my questions ahead of time. What am I going to ask the kids? And I put it on sticky notes out in the margin. What am I going to do next? And I'll have that book out and ready to go. So I'm not losing a lot of transition time between one subject and the next. And as far as keeping spelling in, the secret to that is I always just do it first. The second the kids walk
So
in
it's
the
not
room.
the temptation to be the sacrificial lamb.
Right, right. And I know for me, because I like to talk, literature I usually put at the end because I can shrink that up or stretch that because I have a lot to say. But they walk in, I check homework, we stand and say the poem, we move right into spelling, and it's 2 or 3 minutes of my day, and I move into the next thing. So spelling's not the sacrificial lamb.
The same is true on elementary too, because you could incorporate spelling in as transitional between other subjects in order to get that in. I think it may be helpful to some teachers new to the Abeka curriculum to know that even though most schools have 180 school days, our Abeka curriculum is designed for 170 lessons, which does allow 10 lessons of flexibility for standardized testing or just the various things that come up throughout the school year. You do want to be careful not to just cut out all the review days because, again, that spiral review is important. But know that there's flexibility. And don't you agree that Carmen's idea of having a plan? I'm having flashbacks of the test notebook in the faculty room at the academy where we had to sign up for when our tests were being given, because the idea was you have to have a plan or you won't finish. So have a plan, use curriculum daily lesson plans to be a part of that and stay on track.
Can I drill a little deeper into this question? And what do you envision? So a lot of times we look at the calendar and say, I just don't have time. But we've got to drill down a little bit deeper and say, what is actually taking our time? So what would you say from your experience? So Monica, you've taught math, and that to me is one of the more challenging subjects to teach, because there's that temptation of, I've got 2 students who are just not getting it. Let me go over it again. Or Carmen, you've taught English, and the packing everything in there. And, you know, you guys have a lot of experience as well. What are some of those pit holes that maybe we can realize they're coming and effectively avoid them?
I think that you really hit the nail on the head for one of them, because I personally had fallen into that trap of the students, a couple of students, and feeling like you have to go back. But one of the nice things about the curriculum is with the spiral review. So when you do that, though, it's like a snowball effect. Once you get behind, it is so hard to catch back up again, because then in the future you've got to cut something else out. And what are you going to cut out? But it's really helpful to rely, in a sense, on that, not totally, but on the spiral review, because if your students don't get it one day, they come in, you're going to review it in a math class in the homework, because the homework reinforces the lesson the day before. So they're going to see that concept at the beginning of the class when you present homework, and they're going to see it in the review problems throughout that are built in with the spiral review. So, and then sometimes, like I know we have help classes as well. So that's something that can help those students as well if there is a help class opportunity for them.
Right.
Or maybe the school has something like PCA had, where you have the honors students
Right.
who will tutor those students in a study hall,
Yeah.
which I think those are two things that have helped students in my math classes a lot.
Yeah,
Those
one of
two
the things
opportunities.
that I have seen over the years in from a new or beginning teacher is that tendency in we'll say math class. And so the first part of math class is to go over the homework from the night before. And undoubtedly there will be students with some questions from that night's homework. And the tendency is I'm going to answer all those questions and go through all these questions. The reality is that student may not have really dedicated themselves to that homework, and they're relying on the crutch of, I'll explain it in class. Right. And so if you're not careful, the math teacher then takes 30, 40 minutes going over homework problems, and we're not prepared to effectively then teach the next lesson. So we try to cram the next lesson in 5, 10 minutes. And then so they're not prepared for that night's homework. And it just becomes, as you said, this snowball effect. So it's important that we pull this back. If there are questions that students don't understand, then let's address them on an individual basis after class, after school, before school. We'll set up a separate meeting time, but not hold back the whole progression of the calendar because of 1 or 2 questions right there. Plus, it'll allow individual accountability with the students that you may not be able to get in a classroom setting. Any other thoughts from any of you on the potential pitfalls of why we can't get through the material?
You touched on it with your World War II example, but I think we all have to be careful as teachers that we don't get stuck
Favorites.
anywhere where we're the most comfortable.
Right.
And to Carmen's point, if I can remember writing into my curriculum, even though it might have said spend 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there, I wrote the clock times.
I did too. I
At
did
12:05,
exactly.
I have to be
did.
finished
You
with
look
my
at
work.
my book uses pencil marks with clock times right down the column.
I just knew myself, and I
Right.
knew how fast that time would go.
Yep.
So
They're my mile
little
markers.
cheats like that will help.
Yeah, very good, very good.
I would say along, like sometimes, and I know Carmen started off with this, but with management, even little things like coming into your classroom and already having pre-selected students that are going to put homework problems on the board. And that saved a lot of time. Sometimes the night before I would tell students for homework, you're going to put this problem on tomorrow. You're going to do this problem tomorrow. You're going to do this problem tomorrow. And so they would come in the class and they would put their problems on the board and they would be up and ready to go. And so that even something like that saves minutes.
I can
make a
testify
difference.
for both of them on that. I observed in their classrooms. I think you did as well. And Carmen was notorious for starting before the bell. Her students knew they had right at the bell. Her students knew they better be there 2 minutes early because she was ready to roll.
Yeah, but that sends a clear message, and often
urgency.
we spend a lot of time at the beginning of class and don't even realize how much time we're spending on things that are not productive. If you'd like some more help in this area, please reach out to us. Again, send an email to schools@abeka.com. Our educational consultants can work with you and help you through the process, because it is so important. I'm so grateful that several of you asked that question of how can we get through the curriculum. It's important.
Great.
Good. Okay, let's see what else we've got coming up with questions. Does Abeka have worksheets available digitally? So anyone?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I think we can answer it quickly. Abeka does offer a number of digital textbooks in the high school, but to this point, our market analysis has indicated that for the most part, students are still putting pen and pencil to paper in their work text, books that need to be written in. And so the majority of our digital textbooks focus on our literature books, our history books, the ones that aren't necessarily intended to be written in. So right now, based on market feedback, we're not producing a lot of the worksheet type products digitally, but that is certainly something that we will keep our ear to the ground.
Right.
And even seeing the number of people that ask that question helps
Right.
us see that there's an interest in that for the future.
Yeah, there's an interest. We have found at Pensacola Christian Academy, maybe you have at your school as well, particularly in our early grades, our students, because we are such an electronically based society, our students have not developed fine motor skills like they would have historically, of just picking up something as basic as a pen or a crayon or a piece of chalk. They struggle with that. And so there is great value in just working physically on their fine motor skills.
Great point.
This next question has some connections with what we've already begun discussing, and that is what are best suggestions for teaching procedures and routines in the classroom, and which procedures do you find most important? If you have watched some of our sessions already this week through this online summer seminar, you should have picked up on some of the principled suggestions that we would give related to this. So if you haven't yet watched that, go back and watch these. This question is very broad and will be challenging to answer in just a sentence or two. But these sessions that we're sharing with you this week are really geared towards that. But it comes down to having a plan and following through with the plan. If we don't have a plan as a teacher in our classroom, then we're just going to follow the path of least resistance, and that won't be productive for our students. So it comes down to having a plan, sticking with the plan, but using that Christian grace and common sense in the process to realize that sometimes we need to purposefully and intentionally deviate, but also have a plan to get back onto the plan.
Mr. Burks, can I on that point mention very briefly something we have been a little bit surprised to learn that teachers don't know? You've each referenced it, but it's our curriculum daily lesson plans. We have found that a lot of teachers have the books, but aren't familiar with used to be the gray binder, now it's the purple and black binder, that really is the heart of the Abeka curriculum at the elementary level especially. So if you have the teacher's edition that Jimena showed earlier for Arithmetic 4, you have the student books, but you don't have those daily curriculum lesson plans, you're missing the core piece of what goes into developing the scope and sequence of everything we're going to teach our students. We fully believe those lesson plans ought to be used flexibly. They're not a master, they're a guide. But I just want to make sure there's not a single teacher joining us in our Q&A today that doesn't know the value of having a flexible guide like curriculum lesson plans to follow. Right, good. Yeah. Several of us, our children are involved in sports. And if you're going to reach a goal in sport, you have to have a stepping stone and mile markers before you get there, rather than just, I hope I get there in the end. And the teaching's no different. This next question, we're bringing parents into the discussion. I'm surprised that this is our first question related to parents so far. How do you approach parents who have a tendency to step in and answer questions for the student and stress the importance of allowing students to develop their own answers? I believe I need a new way to communicate this to parents as other attempts have been unsuccessful. So a gracious way of saying we have some helicopter parents trying to vicariously live through their children. First, I would say that's probably a temptation for all of us who are parents, because it's in our nature to love and to cherish and to protect, and we want to see our children succeed. And so we have to intentionally and purposefully step back and allow them this. And I have caught myself many times in my children's life, someone will ask a question, and I sense that awkward moment of pause, and I just want to interject and answer it on their behalf. And over again, I've had to stop myself. No. But I've got years of education experience, and we're working with parents who don't have that same. So how do we communicate that effectively to our parents? There's a bit of a business model here, right? They're paying for an education that we're trying to provide because they've asked us to. We've partnered with them. And so in order to provide that education, we have got to have the feedback from the client, the student who's sitting in front of us in those classes. And when we're getting that feedback by a parent being too hands-on with homework or whatever's being referred to here, we're certainly not delivering the value that they've contracted with us.
If I can use a very simplistic analogy, it would be as if we went to a doctor's appointment and the nurse technician went to take my child's vital signs, and they were squirming, and so I volunteered for them to take mine. That's not going to do any good with that. But questions are a form of assessment, and we can't find out where that student is until they have been assessed, and that's coming through questions. So it's super important that the child answered their own questions.
So, Mr. Burks, you said too, we're teachers, so it kind of comes naturally to us to understand the dynamic of the classroom. But if a parent doesn't understand that, then maybe we need to take the time to explain to them, here's how you could help. Right. Don't answer the question for them, but read the paper and maybe circle the words that have a spelling mistake and let them go back and correct their own mistakes. Or here's how you can review 5 history questions. Or even better, I found 5 mistakes on that page. So if you can go find them. Give them tips, so that it's not just like hands off. It's here's how you could help. Here's how I would help them in the classroom. Here's how you could help. Right. And depending on what the specific areas that you're struggling with, it may be as early as kindergarten and first grade with reading help.
How many prompts do I give them? How do I help them sound that out? Again, our educational consultants will be glad to help you through some of those specific applications of this question. But I completely agree with you that it is important that the child begin to develop and strengthen their own intellectual muscles so that they can perform. Okay, I've got a kindergarten question here. Are we teaching a full day K-5? Is there a sample full day schedule available? We're built on half days.
This is such a great question going into our revision of our
Right.
preschool and kindergarten products in the future, because we are seeing more and more full day programs. And based off of what I'm familiar with at PCA, where my own children have come through the kindergarten program, they do that half day academics in the morning when
Right.
they're the most awake and the most engaged. And then you have an afternoon program called extended care for those of us that are still working. And they go into more of a lunchtime, a rest time, and then a play time in the
Right.
afternoon. And you have teachers that engage them with various activities throughout that time. I suppose if your students were able to handle it and be alert, you could perhaps take the 4 hours of the academics and spread it throughout 6 hours and just insert the play times and other things in between that. So lots of flexibility, but currently you're right, from a true academic standpoint, it is a half day program with flexibility for you to either design the afternoon or to spread it out and then insert those play
Right.
times in between.
Right, and you'd have to follow, of course, your school's, if your school is accredited, what your accrediting body requirements are, or if you have any kind of state or country laws or expectations, you have to be familiar with those and make sure that you're applying those to your school as well, where they apply. I've got a science question here. Do you have any suggestions for a high school science teacher who does not have access to a lab when teaching chemistry? So, Monica, I imagine that we have faced this, and I'm thinking of an answer to that, but I wanted to see what you have.
We do have a set of lab videos that have been done independently. And so those would be probably what I would say would be the first alternative, is to go to those and look at those, check those out and see if those would fit your needs. Because it is a teacher in the lab, going through the lab with the students. The students are able to still take their lab manual and go through the lab manual. They can't, of course, they're not going to be able to do it hands-on,
Right.
but they can still see what the teacher's doing. They can still answer the lab questions that are in the lab manual. They can still get from the lab videos what they would need to complete the lab portion of a chemistry class.
Right. Are you aware of anyone who does a hybrid of maybe they don't have the full lab with chemicals, but they still have some other things that they could do with maybe not a traditional lab, but going outside the school or something like that?
I don't know of anyone personally,
Okay.
but I know that it's built so that you can see each lab itself and the
Good.
materials that are needed in the supplies and the materials. So it would be fairly simple for a teacher to look at the lab manual, know which labs they have supplies for that they can do. And sometimes the supplies are simple as ones that you can pick up at Home Depot or
Right.
at Lowe's or some hardware supply store.
Right.
And you could do the lab that way.
Good.
Or with that.
Good. And then I've got a third grade reading question here. You or Amy maybe could jump in on this. The curriculum is mostly just reading orally. The comprehension workbook seems to be over their head. Okay? How do I help struggling readers who may not have had the Abeka phonics before? Also, how do I help them improve in the oral reading when they seem to struggle with the words? So, thinking of a weak reader coming into third grade, what kind of helps do we have for them?
Minnie, you worked with second grade, so talk to us a little bit about the handbook for reading.
Yes, I was actually just thinking of that. In the time that I was in second grade, we had students that were even like a second language. That's what English was for them. And we would have additional help classes for the students that were struggling with that. So we would just take that handbook and find, and go to the beginning and kind of start. I don't want to say.
If I can interrupt you, by the way,
Yes.
this next question kind of ties into that.
Okay.
Can you think of specific modifications we might make for ELL or ESL students? So
Okay.
you're kind of answering two questions at
Yes,
once.
yes. Well, I will say that book is your best friend. And I know that it's just a book for it seems like for younger readers, but this will even help students as they get older, because we're going to the very basics of how sounds are supposed to sound, and then how they're supposed to read different words. So if you can find time in your schedule to just add a couple of help classes for them, and it wasn't a very long period of time. It was just like 15 or 10 minutes, your dismissal, just kind of going through flashcards, repeating their phonics charts, that kind of thing. It just greatly improved both students who had difficulty reading when they got into second grade. So by the time that first semester was over, they had transitioned even from their reading circle, from being at number 3 into 2, and eventually that next semester one of them even transitioned into the first reading group. So that handbook is your best friend.
I agree.
Yeah.
My older 3 children, adopted from Ukraine, didn't speak any English coming into PCA. My son was in 4th grade. We used the handbook for reading with him. I used it with 6th grade students who were coming in. I'm not having a foundation in phonics. So it lays the foundation. And you are so right. If you're using that reading comprehension product, our new reading comprehension skill sheets, our development for critical thinking in reading, if your students can't read, then they're not going to benefit from the critical thinking element in that product. But have them read those selections and then just ask them simple recall questions after they read. And then when they're ready to take on that next level of the critical thinking reading comprehension, then you can start to use the activities on the back of those worksheets. So it's such a great question of how to use your resources flexibly.
Good. We're gonna wrap up here in just a moment. One last question here. Abeka reading was new to my 4th grade classroom this past year. I realized at different points in the curriculum, it showed the students reading from multiple books within the same lesson. How does this work? Perhaps you can
Let me touch on it because I think this is what you're referring to. And I brought with me, or Jimena brought, and I borrowed from her, the reading comprehension products for 6th grade, because I think what you're probably referring to is that they're reading regularly out of what we would call their compilation reader. This is where they're getting the most reading practice. But then these are the speed and comprehension products. They're available for 4th grade, for 5th grade. These happen to be the new ones for 6th grade. If you're seeing more than one reader called for in the same lesson, it's probably one of those lessons where they're doing a skill sheet and then they're reading a story from their reading book. So there are a variety of products, or they may be reading from their reading book, but then they're also assigned to read from their book report book for homework or something like that in preparation for writing the book report in language. So just make sure you have all of those pieces. They are designed to work together in each of those elements, but that's why you sometimes will see more than one product called for in a lesson.
Right.
And again, look at the scope of what's covered in a week. And if you want to arrange those pieces differently, as long as you get them done by Friday, then you'll still be on track for the next week.
Yeah, well, excellent. Well, Monica, Carmen, Jimena, Amy, thank you for joining us this afternoon for this live Q&A. Those of you who have joined us for this online summer seminar in 2020, it is a great honor to be able to partner with you and work with you. We are headed the same direction. We're trying to serve the Lord through Christian education, and we need His sustenance, we need His direction, we need His strength, His power, and it's a privilege to share some time with you. I realize we didn't get to all the questions today, and I apologize for that. But I want to let you know that Abeka is more than just a product developer. We're here to serve and to support Christian education. So if there's anything that we can do for you, please reach out to our educational consultants. Again, the email address is schools@abeka.com, schools@abeka.com. We'd be glad to help you in any way that we can. If you have a question that's specific to summer seminar regarding your CEU certificates or anything else, feel free to shoot us an email at summerseminar@pcci.edu. Again, that's summerseminar@pcci.edu. Again, thank you for joining us, and God bless you as you begin a new school year.